The jungle doesn't care who you are. It doesn't care about your reputation, your training, or how many times you've walked away from a fight. It only cares about one thing. Can you survive? Steven Seagal moves through the undergrowth like he belongs here. Quiet, still, almost invisible. There's something unsettling about a man that size making that little noise. You watch him and you start to wonder, does the jungle fear him, or does he just know how to become part of it? And then there's the other legend. Equally dangerous, equally respected. Someone who has faced impossible odds before and walked away standing. Two icons. Two completely different ideas of what it means to be unstoppable. And only one of them makes it out. Here's the question that's going to stick with you before we even get started. If you were dropped into a dangerous jungle right now, no weapons, no map, no help coming, would you rather have Steven Seagal's calm, ancient wisdom guiding every step? Or would you trust sheer toughness and experience to carry you through? Think about that, because the answer might surprise you by the end. The jungle stretches out endlessly, green in every direction. A ceiling of leaves so thick that the sky disappears completely. You can hear water somewhere far off. You can hear birds. You can hear rustling that might be wind and might be something else entirely. The air is warm and heavy, like wearing a wet blanket that never dries. Every breath feels like work. This is not a place that gives second chances. One wrong step and you're ankle deep in mud that pulls you down. One wrong turn and you've walked 3 hours away from safety without realizing it. The jungle is patient. It has been here for millions of years, and it will be here long after everything else is gone. It does not rush. It waits. And eventually, everything makes a mistake. Steven Seagal stops walking. Just stops. No warning. No dramatic pause. He simply becomes still, like a statue someone left between the trees. His eyes move slowly across the space in front of him, left to right, low to high. He's reading something that most people couldn't even see. A broken twig at exactly the wrong angle. A patch of mud disturbed by something heavier than a bird. A silence in the insect noise that wasn't there 10 seconds ago. He already knows something is coming. He knew before you did. He probably knew before whatever is out there did. That's the thing about Seagal that people underestimate. They see the size. They see the slowness. They think slow means weak. But slow here doesn't mean hesitant. Slow means deliberate. Slow means nothing is wasted. Every single movement he makes has a reason behind it. And most of those reasons trace back to decades of training and disciplines most people have only read about in books. Aikido teaches you something that most fighting styles don't. It teaches you that the most dangerous moment in any confrontation isn't the attack itself. It's the second before the attack, when energy is being gathered, when intent is forming, when the decision hasn't fully been made yet. That's the moment Seagal lives in. He doesn't wait for danger to arrive. He meets it while it's still deciding whether to show up. Now picture the second legend stepping into this same jungle. Different energy immediately. Where Seagal moves quietly, this figure moves with weight and purpose, boots pressing firmly into the ground, shoulders square, eyes forward. Not reckless, but bold. Not careless, but confident in a way that says, I've been in bad places before, and I'm still here. Two legends. Same jungle. And the jungle is already deciding which one it wants to test first. You feel the tension before anything happens. That's the strange thing about watching two forces like this in the same environment. The action isn't always what creates the feeling. Sometimes it's just the knowledge that something is building, something is tightening, and eventually it's going to snap. You lean forward without meaning to. Your eyes start scanning the screen the same way Seagal is scanning the trees. That's the jungle working on you. It does that. It makes everyone a little more alert, a little more animal, a little more aware of how small and soft humans actually are when the walls disappear. Think about the last time you were somewhere truly dark and quiet. A forest at night. A long hallway with the lights off. That feeling in your chest that makes you want to move faster, breathe quieter, stay closer to something solid. That feeling is ancient. It lives in the oldest part of your brain, the part that remembers when humans weren't at the top of anything. The jungle wakes that part up fully. There's nowhere to hide from it out here. Seagal understands that feeling and uses it, not to frighten himself, but to stay sharp. Fear, when you know how to hold it correctly, becomes fuel. It sharpens the senses. It slows down time. It turns ordinary hearing into something closer to a superpower. He has trained his body and mind to take that fear and convert it, cleanly and quickly, into focus. The other legend handles it differently. Confidence is the armor. When you have survived enough, when you have been tested enough times and come out the other side, you stop letting the dark scare you the same way. You've already been in the dark. You know what's in it. And you know how to handle what's in it. Both approaches work. Both approaches have kept people alive in situations that should have ended much worse. But the jungle is going to demand something specific tonight, and the real question is which approach fits what's coming. The trees thicken. The light drops another level. Something large moves through the brush about 40 meters to the left, and neither legend turns to look at it immediately, which tells you something important. Beginners look at every sound. Experience filters. Experience separates the sounds that matter from the sounds that don't, and it does that filtering so fast that it looks like calmness from the outside. Steven Seagal crouches slowly near a low-hanging vine and runs 2 fingers along the bark of a tree. He reads the marks there the way a librarian reads a book's spine. Information, history, evidence of what passed through here and when. His face stays completely neutral, not relaxed, but controlled. There's a difference. Relaxed means your guard is down. Controlled means your guard is so solid that it doesn't need to show itself. He stands back up without rushing and adjusts his direction by maybe 15 degrees. That tiny change, almost invisible, will make the difference between walking towards something that wants to be found and walking around it completely. That's not luck. That's accumulated knowledge operating at a speed that looks intuitive because it's been practiced until it became automatic. Meanwhile, the second legend has found a high point, a natural ridge where the tree-line breaks slightly, and is scanning the landscape with the kind of big-picture thinking that comes from military-level awareness. Where Seagal reads the fine detail, this approach is reading the whole board. Every chess player needs both. The player who only sees the piece in front of them loses. The player who only sees the whole board misses the attack, forming 3 squares away. Together, theoretically, they would be unstoppable. But this isn't a cooperation story. This is a survival story, and the jungle is getting smaller. Here's what most people don't think about when they imagine a survival situation. They think about fighting. They think about the dramatic moment where strength and skill get tested against something dangerous. That's the exciting part, the part that gets the heart going. But the real survival game happens before that moment. It happens in the hour before the danger arrives. It happens in the small decisions. Stop here or keep moving. Drink from this stream or find another one. Climb to get a better view or stay low and stay hidden. Steven Seagal has spent his life studying those small decisions in the context of ancient Japanese martial philosophy. The concept of Mushin, which means a mind without clutter, without hesitation, without noise, acting purely from training and instinct combined. When you achieve Mushin, the small decisions aren't really decisions anymore. They happen below the level of conscious thought, the way breathing happens, the way blinking happens. You just move correctly because incorrect movement has been trained out of you. That's a real thing. That's not movie magic. Elite athletes describe versions of it in every sport. Surgeons describe it during complex procedures. Soldiers describe it under fire. The body and mind, trained deeply enough, can operate at a level that the thinking brain can't fully access or explain. It feels like instinct. It feels like luck, but it's actually just repetition reaching a threshold. The jungle at this depth is completely different from the jungle at the edge. At the edge, there's still light. There are still sounds from the world outside, distant traffic, faraway voices, the suggestion of civilization. The deeper you go, all of that disappears. The world outside stops existing. There is only this, only now, only what is directly in front of you and what might be behind you. Time changes. An hour feels like 10 minutes in one moment and like 3 hours in the next. The mind loses its regular anchors and starts operating on pure environmental feedback. For most people, this is terrifying. For someone like Seagal, it's familiar. It's close to the meditative states he has practiced. The The removal of external distraction. Just awareness. Just presence. Just the current moment existing fully without the weight of everything before or after it. The second legend is experiencing something different in that same deep jungle. Not fear, but heightened alertness. The kind that comes from recognizing a serious situation and deciding, clearly and without drama, to handle it. There's something deeply respectable about that reaction. No overthinking, no freezing, just assessment and action. That combination has pulled people through disasters that planning alone couldn't have survived. Something shifts in the air. It's hard to explain exactly what changes, but everything changes simultaneously. The birds stop, not gradually, all at once. The rustling that was constant background noise simply stops, like someone turned a switch. In the sudden silence, both legends feel it at the same moment. That cold clarity that says the environment has just changed category from difficult to dangerous. Seagal's hand moves first, a slow, controlled gesture that means nothing dramatic, but positions his body in a way that covers 3 angles simultaneously. Anyone watching who didn't know what they were looking at would think he was just stretching. That's the point. Efficiency, so deep it looks casual. Threat response that looks like resting. The second legend is still standing, still dangerous, still entirely present. This is not a story about weakness. Let that be completely clear. Anyone who makes it this deep into the jungle, who faces what waited in that silence, and is still standing at the end of it, has demonstrated something extraordinary. Not everyone could. Most couldn't. But the question wasn't who survives the jungle by fighting it hardest. The question was who walks out. And walking out requires something that fighting alone can't always provide. It requires the ability to move through a dangerous environment over time without exhausting yourself. To read what's coming before it costs you everything to respond to. To make the jungle familiar rather than foreign. Seagal walks toward the edge of the tree line with that same unhurried, deliberate pace he entered with. Nothing about his movement suggests he survived something. His breathing is controlled. His posture is the same. If you didn't know what had just happened behind him in those trees, you would think he was simply going for a walk somewhere quiet. That's the final lesson the jungle teaches, and it's the one most people never learn because most people never stay long enough to learn it. The jungle doesn't reward the loudest response. It doesn't reward the fastest or the most aggressive or the most dramatic. It rewards the response that costs the least and achieves the most. Conservation of energy. Economy of movement. The calm that isn't weakness, but is instead the highest expression of preparation. When Seagal steps out of the trees and back into the light, the jungle behind him settles. The birds start again. The rustling returns. The insects find their rhythm. The environment goes back to whatever it was before he entered it, as if he was never there at all. That's mastery. Not leaving a mark. Moving through without destroying. Arriving, handling, departing. The jungle keeps its secrets and gives up nothing except to those patient enough to listen to it, slow enough to read it, and trained enough to respond in the language it actually speaks. Now think about this. Really think about it. Everything you just witnessed comes down to one idea. Preparation meeting the moment. Seagal didn't survive because the jungle was kind to him. The jungle was not kind. The jungle is never kind. He survived because 20, 30, 40 years of accumulated practice built a version of himself that fit that environment when the environment turned dangerous. That's not a story about a movie character. That's a principle. That's something that lives in the real world completely independent of jungles and action sequences. The person who reads the situation before the situation becomes a crisis has an advantage that no amount of last-second effort can match. The person who has trained their responses until those responses don't require conscious thought anymore has access to a speed that looks supernatural, but is actually just the result of enormous, invisible work done long before the moment of need arrived. You felt this in smaller ways in your own life. The moment where something went wrong and you handled it smoothly because you'd already thought through that kind of problem before. The situation where you stayed calm while everyone around you was panicking because you'd been in difficult situations before and you knew the panic wasn't helping. Those were your jungle moments. And the way you handled them came down to exactly the same thing. What had you already built before that moment arrived? Seagal built something remarkable. Whether you're a fan of his films or not, whether you know anything about Aikido or traditional Japanese martial arts or not, the philosophy underneath his approach to that jungle is one that has stood up across centuries and across cultures. Move with the situation, not against it. Use what comes at you. Stay efficient. Stay calm. Never waste motion. Two legends entered that jungle. The trees swallowed them both. Only one walked out the same way he walked in, quiet, unhurried, having said nothing to the jungle that the jungle hadn't already said first. And somewhere behind him in the deep green, the jungle goes on. Patient as it always was. Waiting for the next one. Waiting to see whether the next person who enters it brings enough preparation to match what it asks for. The question it's going to ask you, eventually, in your own version of this jungle, whatever form that takes in your life, is the same question it asked Seagal. Do you know yourself well enough to move correctly when everything around you is moving wrong? He did, and that made every difference in the world.